Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh. In the battlefields of Ukraine, Russia has made some steady progress in the Donbas region. The city of Severodonetsk has witnessed some of the most intense street fighting so far. Russia has been forced to fight neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street, pulverizing homes and office buildings. There is no official count on the number of dead, but the losses are horrific. This video from the Sumy region is of a home that caught fire after it was struck by a Russian shell. At least about 10 homes in the vicinity suffered the same fate. People who have the means have already fled from the cities of eastern Ukraine. But those who are caught in the crossfire are spending time in bomb shelters, or even worse, in their bombed and shattered homes with little hope to look forward to. The Ukrainian soldiers are putting up a spirited fight. This video, tweeted by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, gives you a glimpse of what is transpiring on the battlefield. But the hard fact is, Ukraine is outgunned by Russia's ability to field superior weapons with longer range and more deadly firepower. The Russians have almost completely surrounded the twin cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. The week that has just gone by has been described as the worst week of fighting since Mariupol. Last week, the Brotherhood of Europe assured more aid and more weapons to the Ukrainians. And this week, Kiev has moved one step closer to becoming a member of the European Union. But amidst the diplomacy, Ukraine is losing ground that it may never recover. The United States and the other allies of Ukraine who are sending weapons must ask themselves this question: how much military assistance will Ukraine need to turn the tide of this war? And are the Western powers ready for this escalation? The war in Ukraine has been described as a contest of artillery, the traditional mode of combat for the Russian army. Artillery shells have rained down on Ukrainian cities, and one city after another in eastern Ukraine has been smashed to smithereens. But this war is no longer limited to what is conventionally understood to be Europe, nor is it limited in the scope of the weapons that have been used so far. While addressing a group of military graduates in Moscow, the Russian President Vladimir Putin had a pretty dire warning.
Among
the priority areas is equipping the troops with new weapon systems that will determine the combat effectiveness of the army and navy in the years and decades to come. In addition to the new weapons already tested on the battlefield, the troops began to receive S-500 air defense and missile defense systems that have no match in the world. The heavy intercontinental ballistic missile was successfully tested. It is planned that by the end of this year, the first such complex will be put on combat duty.
The deadly Satan II missile that Russia test-fired on the 20th of April is expected to be deployed by the end of this year. The Satan II can carry 16 nuclear warheads. It has an estimated range of 18,000 kilometers. Its top speed is estimated to be well over 6 Mach, that is 6 times the speed of sound. And once fired, this missile has the potential to devastate any European capital in less than 200 seconds. Putin has described the missile as invincible. But the bigger question is, where does Russia want to deploy these missiles? As signatories to the New START Treaty, Russia and United States have imposed a limitation on their strategic offensive weapons. So the precise location of the different Russian and American missile bases is fairly accurately known. But are hypersonic missiles covered under the New START Treaty? According to military experts, this is a bit of a grey area, and this exclusion appears to be deliberate. In the last decade, Russia has been aggressively expanding its Arctic military capabilities. Russia's coastline accounts for almost about 53% of the Arctic Ocean. And it is here that Russia intends to station its hypersonic missile systems. The militarization of the Arctic by Russia must worry the other claimants of the Arctic. In the last decade, Russia has reopened nearly about 50 previously closed Soviet-era military posts. It has refurbished about 13 air bases, 10 radar stations and 20 border outposts. The Russian Special Forces are also a part of the Arctic Brigade and have been deployed for military drills and exercises. Last year, Russia unveiled an ultra-modern military base on the Franz Joseph Land island called the Arctic Trefoil. This is Russia's northernmost military outpost and is the second of its kind facility after KOTELNY. It is now home to the upgraded Nagorskoye Air Base, and it provides Russia with air, sea and land capabilities. The KOLA Peninsula is the epicenter of Russia's Arctic power projection. It is here that Russia is estimated to have stationed its highest number of nuclear weapons. The Gadzievo submarine base at the KOLA Peninsula has been expanded, and the nearby Plesetsk Cosmodrome is widely used for testing Russia's latest military hardware. The NOVAYA ZELMYA island in the Russian Arctic is home to the Rogochevo Air Base. Additional radar and electronic warfare equipment has been recently set up. In 2019, the S-400 air defense missile systems were also deployed at the Rogochevo. The TIKSI air base in central eastern Russia has been significantly expanded with 11 new structures in total. S-400 air defense missile systems will also be stationed here, supplemented by the radio technical regiments. The KOTELNY Island, which is one of the largest Siberian islands, is equipped with a state-of-the-art trefoil military compound, along with Sopka-2 radar facilities and missile launch vehicles. Russia views the Arctic as its future. The melting ice due to global warming, the opening of the northern sea route, which will be quicker and more economical than Suez Canal, and also the untapped mineral wealth of the Arctic, all point towards a potential rivalry that is looming in the Arctic. So while NATO struggles to quietly sneak in arms into Ukraine, Russia is already planning for its next war. When Russia struck an underground arms depot in western Ukraine using its hypersonic Kinzhal missile, the American Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin initially dismissed the use of hypersonic missiles as not a game changer. But increasingly, military analysts are now pointing out that hypersonic missiles are a lot more difficult to intercept because they fly so much more faster with an unpredictable trajectory and are detected much later in their flight as opposed to ballistic missiles. It is increasingly these types of missiles that Russia is positioning at the Arctic. And in the battlefield, technological superiority is the key. How will China launch its invasion of Taiwan if it opts for war? How will it deploy its air power, its troops, its missiles, and also its naval bases? Joseph Wen, who is a senior at the Soochow University in Taipei, has designed a set of maps that give us a picture of what a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan will look like. Establishing air superiority over Taiwan is not going to be an easy task. So instead of relying on its fighter jets, China will try and use its missiles to try and systematically dismantle Taiwan's ability to strike back. For this, China has built up an array of military bases. According to open source intelligence data, this is how the Chinese missile bases have been spread out across the country. There are an estimated 109 missile bases, and a majority of them are along China's east coast. China has also packed its eastern coast with an estimated 46 naval bases and other naval assets. And it is from these air bases that China will fly its fighter jets in case of an attack on Taiwan. But how likely is it that China will invade into Taiwan? President Xi Jinping has minced no words. He has repeatedly stated his ambition is to reunite Taiwan with mainland China. In the month of June so far, the Chinese fighter jets have invaded in Taiwan's air defense identification zone a total of 12 times. And in the last 10 days, there's been panic in Taiwan's skies a total of 8 times. These sorties by the Chinese warplanes happened without any provocation, with no pattern to their predictability. And these are not minor incursions either. For instance, on the 23rd of June, there were 22 Chinese warplanes that flew into Taiwan's air defense identification zone. On the 22nd of June, there were 6 Chinese warplanes that tested Taiwan's air defense preparedness. On the 21st of June, there were a total of 29 Chinese warplanes that flew through Taiwan's air defense identification zone, while on the 19th of June, 10 Chinese warplanes popped up on Taiwan's radars. There's a clear pattern to what is unfolding over the Taiwan Strait, an unmistakable case of intimidation and bullying by Beijing in a bid to cow down Taipei. While the world's attention is riveted on the war in Ukraine, China is turning the screw on its renegade province. Sending warplanes into another country's air defense identification zone is not tantamount to open hostilities, but it is a grey zone tactic that China has increasingly employed since December 2020 to keep Taiwan on the edge and to wear down its defense preparedness. In the last 1 year, Joe Biden has on 3 different occasions committed to defending Taiwan militarily. But each time, the White House has walked back on his commitment.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made.
Military analysts in the region say that for Taiwan to stand any chance against China, the United States must intervene. But the question, of course, is, has the United States got an appetite for an open confrontation with China?
Does the United States have the appetite to get involved in a direct confrontation with China over Taiwan? The United States must do that if it is indeed interested in getting involved in any way in economic, political, geostrategic affairs in the Indo-Pacific theater. Why? If you lose Taiwan, most automatically, you will lose the footprint that the United States has had over the last 77 years on the soil of Japan. Japan now is the most faithful ally, the most trustworthy ally to the United States. But deprived of Taiwan, Japan's strategic space is going to get narrowed, even smothering.
The Chinese defense minister has threatened an all-out war in case Taiwan were to declare its independence. China's intent to invade and capture Taiwan is in little doubt. But at what moment will the Chinese dragon feel bold enough to fire its first missiles across the Taiwan Strait is what the world should watch out for. The Tanzanian government is locked in a deadly confrontation with the indigenous Maasai people. The bone of contention is a patch of prime land that is spread over 1,500 square kilometers in the northern part of the country. On the 10th of June, there was a confrontation between the Tanzanian police and the indigenous Maasai pastoralists. An estimated 150,000 Maasai tribes people are facing eviction from their ancestral lands, which the Tanzanian government wants to turn into a game reserve for the wealthy Emirati trophy hunters. These videos that are now doing the rounds on social media will give you a glimpse of what transpired on the 10th of June. The Ngorongoro Conservation Area is one of the best-known sites in East Africa. It is home to the spectacular Ngorongoro crater and sits right adjacent to the Serengeti National Park. The Maasai people fought back with the weapons they had, bows and arrows and machetes. In the violence that ensued, more than 30 Maasai people are reported to have been injured. The evictions have predominantly taken place at the Ololo Sokwan, Olorin, Kirtalo and the Arash villages. Driven from their homes, the Maasai people were forced to take refuge in neighboring villages. Some reportedly even fled to Kenya. The Kenyan Senator Ledama Olekina has said that these evictions are completely illegal.
So the incident that happened in June, where the government went in there and attacked and forcefully moved the people, and they are now sending more soldiers, more, they're using more force to be able to move everybody. They are not even taking any action to try and help the people. What they are doing is that they're saying the money is more important than the people. And the reason why they're doing that is because the Maasai have preserved their area for decades, and nothing has ever affected the ecosystem of that region. So now they are seeing that the tourists are attracted to that area. We're now calling upon all the tourists around the world not to go there, because the Tanzanian government does not care about the people. It only cares about the dollars that they'll receive from the people who will pay the $50,000 license to be able to go and kill a wild animal.
For the Maasai people, their ancestral land has huge cultural significance. This is the only home that they've ever known. The Tanzanian government has been seeking to relocate the Maasai people from 1993 onwards. It has allocated nearly 400,000 acres of land at Hendini, as the Tanzanian authorities feel that the Ngorongoro has now become overcrowded, and this is leading to land degradation. But Ledama Olekina disagrees.
It's got absolutely nothing to do with conservation. If you do your history, if you do your research, you'll find that the royal family in Dubai has used a company for many years to be able to try and get that license to come and kill wild animals in Kenya. So that company is associated to the royal family. So it's all about the Benjamins. It's all about money. It has got nothing to do with conservation. We have been living peacefully with the wild animals for many years. Why now? Why is it that the President Kikwete was unable to do that, to move the Maasais? Why is it that John Pombe Magufuli was unable to do that? Why is it important for President Suluhu to do that?
The Maasai people live in land that is spread over northern Tanzania and Kenya. Except for their cattle and land, they own very little. Their unique way of life has remained unchanged for generations. But with the Tanzanian government keen on pressing on with the relocation of the Maasai people, these clashes are expected to continue. In August last year, when the Taliban seized control of Kabul, there were only about 200 to 300 Sikhs in Afghanistan. But today their number has dwindled even further. Why? Because this is a community that has come under direct attack and persecution in the Taliban-controlled state. Those who remain in Afghanistan do so out of compulsion and not choice. Our next report gets you the details.
18th of June 2022 is not merely a date. It's a scar etched on the psyche of Afghan Sikhs. A reminder, yet again, that they are a tiny religious minority in Afghanistan who are never safe. Not even inside their house of worship called gurudwaras. There were several explosions and gunfire that ripped through Gurudwara Karte Parwan in Kabul as armed gunmen stormed inside the premises and started firing indiscriminately. There were about 30 worshippers inside.
It was 6:15 when we heard the first gunfire. We saw downstairs that the guard of the temple was shot. The Taliban soldiers started firing at the militants. The militants entered the temple and the gunfire continued. Almost after 2 hours, the car bomb went off in front of the temple.
A bigger tragedy was averted by Afghan security personnel when an explosive-laden vehicle was stopped from reaching the place of worship.
One of our Taliban members has been martyred, and one of our countrymen who belong to the Sikh community is dead. There are no more casualties. Those militants who attacked the temple have been killed, and the blast site is currently being cleaned.
Sikhs, along with other religious minorities such as Hindus, Shias and Sufis, have been repeatedly targeted in Afghanistan. The ruling Taliban, despite their claims of securing the country since taking over on the 15th of August last year, has repeatedly failed to protect the religious minorities. In 2018, the eastern Afghan city of Jalalabad bore the brunt of a suicide bombing in which at least 19 people were killed, most of them Sikhs. The Islamic State claimed to have carried out the killing. In March 2020, at least 25 worshippers were killed and 8 others injured when ISIS Haqqani network gunmen and suicide bombers stormed inside Gurudwara Har Rai Sahib in the heart of Kabul. It remains, to this day, one of the deadliest attacks on the Sikh community in the strife-torn country. As a result of these continuous and targeted attacks, most of the Sikh families have migrated from the country. Only those who cannot afford to do so remain trapped. From the heydays of the 1970s, when there were about 500,000 Sikhs in Afghanistan, today their number has dwindled to around 200. This latest attack by the Islamic State Khorasan province, the ISKP, an affiliate of the Islamic State militant group, is part of an ongoing turf war between the Islamic State terror group and the ruling Taliban. The Islamic State affiliate, operational in Afghanistan since 2014, is the single biggest security challenge faced by the Taliban. Recently, the Taliban released 5 British nationals held captive for 6 months after several rounds of talks. This, no doubt, is a measure being adopted for an image makeover. But international officials and analysts aren't much impressed, as the risk of violence continues to lurk round the corner in Afghanistan.
The German poet and playwright Bertolt Brecht was certain that even in dark times, there will be singing. But it will be singing about the dark times. This video of 2 Ukrainian women soldiers singing the song Belachav captures the spirit of Ukrainian resistance.
Яка насправді була українська людька, ті проклятих, безжально мочим, тих, що на нашу землю пруть.
Belachav is an Italian protest folk song from the late 19th century. It was originally sung by women workers in the paddy fields of northern Italy, and later in the 1930s and in the 1940s as a protest against the fascists. And it is this very anthem which the Ukrainian soldiers are now singing in the battlefields of Donbas. I'm your host Mohammed Saleh. Thanks for watching.